Hi, I'm Stephen Thomas with Reports on Housing, and I'm coming to you on a Thursday evening on June 26th. And that means that half of 2025 is almost over. Next week, we're going to dive into the third quarter of 2025. It is hard to believe that this year is going by as fast as it is. So we've got another housing debrief, and this week we're going to focus on why prices aren't falling faster. And this is what so many people across the United States have been asking themselves ever since rates made their way up from the twos in 2021, starting off 2022 at 3.25%, and then making its way all the way up to 7.37% by the time we got to October. So they have been stuck at averaging about 7% ever since October of 2022. They've gone as high as 8% in 2023 and as low as just about 6% last year and February of 2023. And as a result of these much higher interest rates and stuck in a higher interest rate environment, you match these high interest rates with where home values are today after home values skyrocketed during the pandemic years, and unaffordability is absolutely unmatched. The only time we've been this unaffordable dates all the way back to the start of the 1980s. And that is when we had interest rates that actually eclipsed in 1981, 18%. And so you can imagine back then it was unaffordable. It's unaffordable right now. But if you look backwards in time, you would actually see that when interest rates were at 18%, values didn't plunge back then either. So as a result of being stuck at this high interest rate environment and unaffordability being unmatched since 1980, there have been so many pundits and so many so-called experts that have been calling on the plunge in pricing right away. And a matter of fact, some of them have been talking about the plunge in pricing that date all the way back to the pandemic years when we first went into the lockdowns. They thought we'd have plunging pricing. And they've just moved from one thing to another and have been talking about that for years. And so this plunging pricing really became a thing as soon as we had interest rates that really absolutely screamed skyward. And as a result, these YouTubers or these so-called experts that are out there, actually they wear a coat, but they don't have the credentials. They don't really deal with all of housing analytics, all economic data. They don't have the economic credentials to back it up, but yet they follow different points from different various sources across the United States and focus on one thing or another. What they're really doing is they're preying on negativity. And that negativity is what sells, especially sells their channel and pays the bills, because there are so many people that actually want a price crash because they were left behind as they saw so many people they saw win when values just absolutely skyrocketed higher during those pandemic years. So as a result, anybody that was left behind, or they were entering that first-time home buyer age bracket of right around 32 years, and now they're going to go purchase, yet we have astronomically high prices as well as these very, very high interest rates. And as a result, they just feel that values should come down as a result. So because of that, that is what these YouTubers and so-called experts actually prey on, and that is negativity sells. These people are going to flood these kind of channels looking for some sort of answer to this. As a matter of fact, they do have their fingers crossed. They are hoping that that is what is going to happen. And as a result of so many people clicking on these channels, these people actually make a pretty decent living just spewing out negative facts all day long over and over again. They have a set narrative that if anything contradicts their narrative, they're not going to actually bring it up. They just will bring up whatever supports their negative narratives. And as a matter of fact, what they're really doing is they're grasping at straws from any source that they possibly can. If there's a market here that illustrates it, or if it's happening over here in Texas, or in Boise, or in Tennessee, or in Florida, in this small town of 25,000 people where values have come down quite a bit, they're going to focus on wherever it is that will support their ultimate narrative that they're trying to throw out there. And so instead, what they should be focusing in on is the power and strength of all data. You've got to look at the complete picture. all housing analytics that are out there, all data, all statistics, not just single data points, but everything. And not only right now, but you really have to go backward in the past and look further and further and further back for as much information as you possibly can. So you just absolutely clog your mind with as much info as you can gather, so that you can come up with the real statistically backed overall arching theme and the trends that are taking place today. Not a narrative, but the trends, and you've got to constantly watch the moving trends. And when you're watching the trends, you can actually see when things begin to shift. And when things begin to shift, it takes time, especially in housing. The Great Recession did not happen instantly. It was this slow moving train that you could actually see way off in the distance, and you knew it was absolutely going to come in watching all the data. And we knew as early as the fall of 2005 that there was going to be a correction in housing, just because of the sheer volume of numbers of homeowners that were out there placing their homes on the market, as well as the delinquency rate that led up to the Great Recession. So you could see it in all of the numbers. And now I'm going to show you what the numbers look like right now and why values aren't falling as fast as many had anticipated. But first, I'd like to bring in our sponsor. And this week, our sponsor is Elite Group. This episode is sponsored by Josh Niehaus and the team at Elite Group Property Inspections. With over 40 years in business, more than 10,000 five-star reviews, and coverage across all of SoCal, they've earned a reputation for being one of the most trusted inspection teams out there. They offer comprehensive home inspections covering over 1,800 items plus their specialized services like roof inspections and termite inspections and sewer inspections and mold and moisture detection and commercial property evaluations. Agents, you'll love this. They include a free repair pricing estimator with every inspection, available through their exclusive agent tool. It's a game changer when it comes to writing repair requests or negotiating credits. They're certified, insured, available 7 days a week, offer bilingual inspectors, and even build through escrow to make the process smooth and stress-free. If you're representing a client or buying a home yourself, do what the pros do. Reach out to Josh Niehaus and Lead Group Property Inspections for peace of mind and next-level service. So whether you're a buyer, seller, or agent, check out Lead Group Property Inspections and connect with Josh Niehaus for top-tier service across all of Southern California. Call Josh at 800-494-8998. That's 800-494-8998. So thank you, Josh, for your continued support. And now I'm going to show you why prices have not been coming down as fast as what everybody had originally anticipated when rates went skyrocketing upward. And we're going to drill in and show you a few different charts that will help really paint the picture so that you understand why home values have not dropped yet as much as what people had thought. Now, this is the Zillow House Price Index. They released one of their most recent reports. So this is all the way through the month of May. And what I'm highlighting here is the Great Recession and what happened to values across the United States during the Great Recession, according to the Zillow House Price Index. And this is just the month-over-month change. And you can really see how values really came down between 2007 through 2011. So for quite some time, values were continuing to come down. The only time that they went up was, you can actually see that there was a small part when it was actually positive, and that had a lot to do with first-time homebuyer tax credits. And if you look on the right-hand side, this is where we have been since they've ratcheted up rates from 3.25% all the way up to 7.37% in 2022. And you could see where it went down for several months in a row, and that was the second half of 2022. And you could see that values pretty much were going up across the United States ever since, and they started to come down again recently. And I'll explain what is going on there. But you see, when you look at that, that is the context of what you want to see. You want to see context going all the way back to 2000. But then I'm going to drill in a little bit closer and show you what's happened since they ratcheted up rates. And you can see the first half of 2022, values were still going up at an incredible clip. And then after that, values have continued to go up month over month. And then recently, earlier this year, after we had January, March, April, and May have been slightly down, each one a little bit more down than the prior month. And so far, if you go from the end of the big run up in housing prices and when values started coming down the second half of 2022. So since June of 2022 to May of 2025, values have gone up net positive plus 4%, when so many people thought values were going to plunge, and that's what they were talking about. And it just didn't happen. Month over month, it still did not happen. And even right now, it's not happening. Values are going down, and there's a reason for that, but they're not plunging. And you really need to look at demand and supply. And the reason why I don't say supply and demand is because we're going to look at demand first. And you can actually see this demand is the last three. This is the last 3 years. 2025 is on the right, then 2024 and 2023. So 2025 has not fully been built yet. We're still working on 2025. It is continuing to go from here. But you can see it's stuck at very, very low levels. I actually refer to these as the triplets. Now, when you compare these triplets to where we were during the Great Recession, it's stuck. Demand, pending sales activity is actually stuck at Great Recession levels. That does not mean we're going into a Great Recession. That just means the number of buyers that are out there are very similar to where we were during the Great Recession, and actually during the lows of the Great Recession. That's kind of where pending sales activity has been stuck because of high rates. We still have people out there that can afford to buy. It's just the pool has really been limited because interest rates have been hovering right at that 7% mark. And you can actually see, this is actually released today on June 26th. This is the National Association of Realtors pending home sales index. And you can see that it's very, very similar to prior years. It's very, very similar to 2024. As a matter of fact, it's right on 2024. It's not as high as in 2023, but it's still very, very similar to both 2024 and 2023. And so pending sales activity really has not changed much at all. And that is because of interest rates remaining very close to that 7% level, so you don't really get that many changes to demand, because we did spend a little bit of time at 6% last year, but it's such a small period of time that it did elevate demand, but you're not going to see it in this very much in these year-over-year comparisons, because it wasn't there for months. We were only at 6% for a week. And this shows you what this actually came out last week, what the total housing inventory is. And this shows you how you can take things out of context as well. Now, if you look at this, this is going back in time, back to 2021, and this is where we are as of the month of May, and we're now at 1,540,000 houses across the United States. And if I draw a line across, you could see, wow, this is higher than where we've been since the start of pretty much the pandemic. And that's what you have to do. That is when the data is being manipulated. This data is being manipulated to produce that result that I just showed you, because you're looking at, where were we in since 2021? Well, yeah, we're a lot higher than that. And actually, when you start to go backwards, and then you see, okay, we're actually making our way back up towards, we're going to surpass 2020 completely. And it's going to be, as the last time it was this high was in 2019. And as a matter of fact, where we think the inventory is going to get is to about 1,700,000, which would put us not quite as high as where we got in 17, 18, and 19, but finally we will get to where we were prior to the pandemic in so many markets across the United States. We're already seeing them in some of the markets that we track locally. But that still is a manipulation. that's still a manipulation because it makes it look like, well, we can continue to go up from there and there'd be way too much inventory compared to demand. Now, I told you demand's very similar to the Great Recession levels. And now this is NAR's data going all the way back to when they started keeping the data in 1982. And you could see here, up here, that's the red. And that is when in 2005, we actually got to 3 million homes. And then you see those three big Himalayas. Those are those three triplets. And that was 2006, 2007, and 2008 when it hit 4 million homes across the United States. Remember, I just told you we just hit in May 1,540,000. And it'll still rise, but not at the clip that it did all the way through May. And it will still rise June, July, August, and probably peak out in August, and then will come down like it does annually every year. Sometimes it peaks a little bit later. We might get a later peak. We've had that recently as well, and that has to do with higher rates later on in the year. But you could see with the orange bracket on the right-hand side, this is where we've been since they ratcheted up rates in 2022. So you see the inventory growing, and in 2023 was small. Then 2024 was larger, and 2025 on the right-hand side, it is getting larger. But when you look at that and you compare it to where the inventory was during the Great Recession, where there was such a surplus of homes, there was just a glut of homes available, it is far more than where we are today. 2.5 million more homes to create a mass amount of pressure on pricing. Plus, there was so many unscrupulous loans that were done prior to that it's going to be extremely hard to develop any kind of an inventory that even gets close to where we were during the Great Recession. And this becomes more of a supply and demand thing. We have been adding more and more supply every year. Demand hasn't changed. More homeowners have come on the market. In 2023, very few homeowners came on the market because of this locked in that people call it. We call it hunkering down. More people have been playing each year. In 2024, more people came on the market than 2023, but demand was the same. So you added that to, on the supply side, started to get heavier, and we started to get out of sync a little bit. And then this year in 2025, even more homes coming on the market than 2024, way more than 2023. And as a result, it's even more out of whack. And so there's more supply, and demand is not changing. So it's applying even more pressure to pricing. When there's more sellers competing against each other, not as many win. Now there's more pressure on pricing. It's not 4 million homes on the market. It's 1,540,000 homes on the market. So the pressure is not the same. That's why you're not getting the giant plunges in pricing. That pressure is nothing like the Great Recession. There is pressure. There is more homes competing against each other. It's just not the garden variety of what we saw prior to the Great Recession and during the Great Recession. And there are other reasons why we're not going to see this massive sell-off. And that is when you look at the household's balance sheets, this is the household debt service payment as a percentage of percent of disposable personal income. Can't even say that. But you can see where we were prior to the pandemic. And where we're at today is way lower than where we were at prior to the pandemic. And it got really high right before the Great Recession, and during the Great Recession, it was way out of whack. And we're not anywhere close to that. And what you have to understand is that so many people refinanced, or so many people financed during the COVID years where interest rates were so low, that their payments are extremely low fixed rate mortgages. And as a result, their household debt service doesn't look that bad compared to where we were in other times, specifically the Great Recession, if you want to compare the two. And then you also see personal savings rates. Now, this was not looking good at the start of 2022, and we even talked about this being something that we're going to continue to watch. But since then, the savings rate has come all the way up to 5%, which is way above where it was in 2006 and where it drilled down to in 2005, even prior. So you could see where this was a problem in the past. It's not really a problem. People are still saving 5% across the United States. That's their savings on a monthly basis. So pretty good savings. And then average hourly earning of all employees, this is all across all private firms, you could see how it has just been skyrocketing upward. And the only time it took a little bit of a blip was during the pandemic, when a lot of people got laid off and they deferred their jobs. Their jobs were on hold. They came back, and you could see what's happened over time, that wages, hourly wages have gone up. And this is median household income also. This actually goes all the way back to 1995. It's like I said, you got to look at everything. You go back to 1995, and you could see at what a rapid rate household income has been rising since the pandemic on the right-hand side. So yes, we're getting more household income. Wages are up, so it's something else to watch. This is in addition, this talks about the health of the United States. The national delinquency rate, this includes all those FHA loans that are delinquent that we talked about in a prior episode, where next year we're going to go from 120,000 FHA properties that are in foreclosure to 180,000. And you can see here that even with those included, we're still at a very, very low rate at 3.22%. That's the national delinquency rate right now, including all those different loan types, versus where we were 2000 to 2005 prior to the Great Recession, where it averaged 4.05% at this time. And this is according to ICE, formerly Black Knight data, and they follow all this data on a monthly basis. Something else to look at. This also goes way back in time. And the overall arching theme is you have to understand that this is the healthiest housing stock that we've ever seen before, that we've ever tracked. And it's built on strong credit, great jobs, low fixed payments. We talked about that. Record tappable equity, which means you could tap your equity and still have 50% equity. Record equity rich, and record own their homes free and clear. 40% of all United States citizens own their homes free and clear. So there's a real stickiness to pricing, and there's not a lot of people that absolutely have to sell. So as a result, you're not going to get anybody that's going to give away the farm. There will be some people that will be more desperate. They're going to be the exception rather than the rule. So what you're going to see in pricing is this slow deceleration, and it will continue to slowly decelerate, and maybe not in the spring of 2026. If we keep rates at 7%, this is what's going to happen. Values continue to come down slowly, and then ultimately this spring of 2026 we'll get a little bit of bump in inventory and on inventory in pending sales activity, and also we'll go positive if we maintain at 7%. But the big thing is, what if rates, because there's a lot of people that are talking about the economy slowing down. We actually agree with this. Second half of this year, sometime the economy is going to slow down, and we're going to get rates that come down. And all they have to do is come down below 6.5%. They were below 6.5% for 47 days. From August to the start of October, there was 47 days where they were below 6.5%. And those 47 days were glorious for pending sales activity. We saw a rise in pending sales activity across the board in all markets that we were tracking. And you can see it in the United States pending home sales index. And we were not there for long. We were just there for 47 days. If we remain below 6.5% with duration, which means for months, this will actually will invite a lot of demand. And as a result, that extra demand is going to eat up a lot of the inventory. And I'm afraid at that point, that's what's going to happen to values. Values are going to stop slowly going down. They're going to reverse course, especially in the hottest price ranges, typically the entry-level housing price ranges in all markets. They will lead this run-up in values. And it doesn't mean that values are going to scream higher. It means they're going to turn positive again, and we'll probably be at a more accelerated pace than what we've seen over the last few years. So reportsonhousing.com, that's where you go for more information, or to subscribe to one of our many reports that dot throughout SoCal, the Bay Area, Phoenix, and Vegas. And our most recent report that came out along the coast is Welcome to a Buyer's Market, talking about the kind of buyer's market that we were just referring to. Nothing with plunging prices, but definitely we're now in buyer's market territory. So if you like what you've seen, like our channel or subscribe to our channel, like this video. And if you'd like to subscribe to one of our reports, Utilize the coupon code PRICES for a free month. Thank you so much for joining us for another housing debrief. We will see you next week, which will be what? The third quarter of 2026. Thank you so much.